Hi everyone, and welcome to our Leadership Reflections interview with Catherine Robertson-Hodder. Catherine is a consulting actuary with over 20 years experience in financial services, in particular in life insurance and more recently in ESG. Catherine loves to work with her clients to help solve business challenges, and she's got a broad range of experience across pricing, financial reporting, M&A, and also being an appointed actuary. Kath, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So to start with, can you tell us a little bit about your career path to date?
Yeah, I can. It makes you realise it's been a while. It's been going. So I started in corporates in New Zealand and Australia. So I did about 3.5 years in New Zealand and then came across. And I did the exams a long way, so a little violin for me there in terms of that. It does teach you tenacity, if nothing else, and persistence is important. And I came to Australia. My organisation had been bought out. My role was moving to another city, and it was just an opportunity to come to Sydney and do the exams there. You know, be in the country that you're doing the exams, and just seemed like a good opportunity on the way to the UK. I didn't make it to the UK, but we did that, which is fantastic. And I've done a variety of roles. So, and then I switched to consulting about 14 years ago. So, and I did a variety of roles in corporate because I do like to, you know, I wanted to be broad. I wanted to try different things and see what I liked and just to round myself out as an actuary. So I'd worked starting in the old, the calcs team at NZI Life, you know, and then moving through, you know, pricing, performance reporting, you know, did some valuation sort of experience studies, then went into pricing, both retail and group, and then went into consulting. So it's been a really nice, really good grounding for me, I think. And just, it helped obviously exams and so on to be working in the fields and so on. But I loved it. It's so as I say, just really looking for broad exposure. And I've just enjoyed that move into consulting and again, using that experience that I had, but challenging myself some more.
Fantastic. And so you've had that great solid grounding in corporate roles and seeing lots of different parts of actuarial work, and now you're in consulting.
Yeah.
Tell us what you love about consulting. Are there any memorable projects that you could share with us?
Yeah, so I love the variety. So I'll talk about first what I love, and then I can talk about a couple of projects. I can talk about it sort of generically rather than too much in detail. But yeah, I love them. I did need variety in what I was doing. I didn't want to be, you know, just turning the handle. And I did one of those courses that does talk about what's your strengths and weaknesses and so on. And I really love that, going into somewhere where they've got a problem and helping solve it. Once you get to the point where it's sort of BAU and so on, that becomes, you know, I'm ready to help you with your new problem, you know, what's your next problem that you need some help with, sort of thing. So I love that. I love in terms of just the work and so on, the collaboration. Like, I feel like we're a team that's all on, you know, you're all trying to help your clients. So you're all working in the same direction. I've loved it. And you've got a peer group who you can, and I'll talk to maybe a little bit later, but, you know, a peer group where you can go, okay, I'm struggling with this professionally. What's my best approach for it? And having that group around you is just fantastic. And you can develop that outside of, you know, consulting as well. I'm not saying you can't, but for me, it just happens quite naturally, which I love. And then
working with a great team that you can sort of share and use as a sounding board and sort of work through challenges together. You enjoy working in a team to do that.
Yeah, and you're really encouraged to, and it's, you know, it is great. So you see people do that. I also wanted, believe it or not, I actually wanted to move into consulting to get a bit of work-life balance. And, you know, it gets a bit of a bad rap, and it sounds strange, but I do feel like it really has helped me develop those skills to be able to go, you know, plan out my time, set some boundaries, because you do need to set boundaries, and you know, and then learn from that and be able to do it. It doesn't mean I'm always doing it myself as well as I can, but it does. And then probably the last one is probably just, it gets me outside my comfort zone. I'm really encouraged to do so, encouraged to learn, you know, encouraged to try new things, and I find that's fantastic. And that's where I think that when you talked about memorable projects, the ones that come to mind are the ones where they did challenge me. You know, they moved me outside my comfort zone. Also where they dealt with broader stakeholders and you're taking them on a journey, like an actuarial journey, but they're non-actuarial. So it's those sort of things. So one of the ones I did was looking at dealing with a partnership that needed to redesign their retirement scheme. And, you know, they already had partners who were in retirement where promises had been made. You had partners who were nearing retirement. You had new partners, and then you're obviously going to have cohorts coming through. So how do you design something that's fair and takes all those stakeholders into account. And it was actually, interviewing people and things like, like it was that sort of not just an actuarial skill set. Yeah, I loved it. It was great. So that was fantastic opportunity. Worked with someone who was very senior, who was leading that project. So again, learning from someone about how to manage something like that, which is very grey in some areas, and getting some, exposure to people going through that. And it's a very personal thing. So it was a great experience. And then there's just other ones where you're just doing weird and wonderful, whether it's doing, helping cemeteries understand how much money they might need to put aside to look after.
Wow, that's an interesting challenge.
Yeah, because you pay up, it's paid up front, and for some burial sites, you're looking after them in perpetuity. So how do you price that? How do you know what your liability is on your balance sheet? So you can see it turns into very much an actuarial issue. So it's a bit different, but it's great. And again, your stakeholders are non-actuarial, and really helping articulate those actuarial concepts and really get them understanding, and really turning it into, well, how much is that going to cost to manage this? How can I help you break this down into a problem you can help me answer? So it's great. And then probably just about a couple of other things, like it's been a great opportunity, a number of years ago, to take on an appointed actuary role. So probably doing it earlier than you might do potentially in a corporate. And so really getting that broad range across a small company, so you're getting a broad range of exposure as well. So that was a great opportunity, getting board exposure and things like that. So those are some of the examples. And also just getting, we do M&As. That's always interesting. People love doing those. And you get to see, again, a bit of how does a company operate and so on. And then probably just, looking at international best practice on some stuff, and looking at taking that step back and going, okay, so if I had a blank bit of paper, how might I do my actuarial, like end-to-end sort of thing within an organization? So it is fun, and it does take you outside your comfort zone sometimes, because you're working with other skill sets. You can really start to value those people who do process design and project management. So it's great. I do love it.
Sounds like there's a lot of variety there in that consulting work, and maybe access to roles that you it would have taken you a bit longer to get that if you'd stayed working in a corporate or working in an insurer, maybe.
Yeah.
So that variety and yeah, interesting that you say work-life balance. So I'd love to come back to that.
Yeah.
Consulting does get a bad rap. I'm asked that all the time, whether consulting, what the hours are like, and whether it's really awful. But yeah, I think it is interesting. So interesting to hear more about that. But I also wanted to touch on, you said that you've been working in ESG lately.
Yes. So again, this is part of that challenging myself as well, and really saying, and it's putting yourself in an area where I'm not necessarily the expert, but I'm training myself up in it, and using actuarial skills, but in a broader way. And it's more than actuarial, as well. We're looking at it in terms of how do we help organizations take that on. You can imagine there is a lot of modeling. We've got areas within KPMG who do some, fantastic modeling around climate risk, physical risks, and so on. And then also that transition risk, and how does it ultimately impact their balance sheet? So we do that. And you can imagine in the GI area, or helping utilities companies and so on, things like that. And also, we've got helping banks understand impacts on their, the credit risk and so on. So I'm going to talk to the summit as well about how this is relevant for life insurers. So that's one of the things I do want to do, is because I do feel like it's something, we've had so many fires going on. It's how do you prioritize this? But I just don't think we've got a choice. And if we don't make the choice to actually do it proactively, it's going to be forced on us. So it's a great opportunity to go out there and say, well, here's some stuff to think about, and here's why it's relevant. And look, relevant like it is in a whole lot of other corporates, but we've got some little quirky things for life insurance you can imagine that make it even more, that you can actually say, and where actuaries can get involved if they want. It's trying to bring that to life a little bit. So that's my plan. So I'm loving it. So I'm trying to drive our strategy in what is actuarial and financial risk at KPMG, and obviously with a fantastic group of teams around me who own pieces of that. So yeah, loving it. And as I say, making me step outside my comfort zone. So again, I think that's good. It's how I guess I'm going to grow and, and learn.
Yeah, that's where we learn, isn't it? When we're outside our comfort zone, even though it's scary. Yeah. It's often where we do most of our growth. So, and I was interested when you were saying, Kath, about how, moving into a new area where maybe you're not the expert, or it hasn't, you're still sort of learning that domain knowledge, and you're understanding the nuances and things. Sometimes that, I think, I think sometimes the fear of making a mistake stops people from moving into new areas, or feeling confident that they can sort of move into different areas. So I'm curious, with your 20 plus years experience, whether or not you've ever made a mistake in your career, and how you handled it.
Yeah, so many, you can imagine. So lots of mistakes.
Mistakes happen. Mistakes happen. We're human.
Exactly. Yeah. That's exactly what I was going to say. We're human, and it's what we learn from them, really. And it's about having some mitigations in place that they're not ridiculous, like that you can actually manage it, but you can come back from anything. But I started out studying law, so there was my first, there you go. But I think one of the ones that came to mind, that comes to mind as I'm thinking about it, is probably around, I remember, and this is early on, I remember I needed to review a PDS, right? I was new to the role. They hadn't had an actuary in that role for a while. So it was a bit like, well, why do we even need the actuary to review this? And then it was like, here's the couple of pieces I need you to review. This is all we've, changed that's relevant for you. So I listened to that, from the product manager and did that. And then I got a phone call a few days later from a director and said, what about this section here? And he went off at me, when he realized that section I hadn't read. And look, maybe that bit wasn't appropriate, but I really learned from it and he was right, like in that way, maybe not the approach to how he told me, but that not being limited by, don't let people say you should only be looking at this, like if you're as an actuary thinking that I need to think about this more broadly, and I need to make sure that I feel like I'm covering this off appropriately, and don't let time or other people, if you feel that is within your purview, you really do need to do it. So it was a great learning, really, and in a lot of ways was something that was probably quite a safe space. So good to learn. And then I probably went too far the other way, as you do, and go, I needed to learn the other way was when I'm sticking my nose in, and going, well, I think I need to know about this, and I actually feel you need to do it this way, or it's how you do it. Like there's an appropriate way to go about it in terms of getting the opportunity to look at something, but then when you do it, providing that advice and understanding when it's actually advice, like you can highlight the risks. You can highlight, but actually if it's a commercial decision, the key thing is, have you provided all the information so they can make an appropriate decision, not just keep forcing the issue, because actually I might think I'm right, but actually there's commercial things outside there that need to be considered. It probably isn't going to be material. You know what I mean? Like there's stuff. So learning that sort of, and that's soft skills, isn't it? It's really learning how to, because I'm quite direct and I can be quite, and I did law because I like arguing, so I could be, but I really need to learn how to manage that, communicating those and doing those right conversations about here's the uncertainty, here's the, the risks, helping them get the mitigants that might assist with it. And then, understanding that that's the advice and I've done my role and I can coach them, but I do need to let it go at some point and just make sure professionally, I feel like they've done the right thing, and there's obviously guardrails around that, because if it was something where it was going to, so the example I'm thinking of when I'm saying this was not going to take a company down, you know what I mean? Like there are obviously APRA whistleblowing provisions and stuff like that. I wasn't saying it was a situation like that. So, professionally, you need to assess that. And what I found really helpful for me since then, and so I had one that didn't go well, and then I've had ones where I've had to do it at KPMG where I might have needed to raise something and I was going a little more forcefully, really having that peer group around me that I could bounce that past to go, well, how should I, am I going about this the right way? Am I thinking about this? Am I being too strict? Like it's just that bouncing in and having someone challenge me on that. Professionally, who understands what I'm trying to say and making sure that I'm also communicating it the right ways. So I think that's been a journey for me in terms of just understanding how to do that. And I'm not perfect at it yet. Well, I don't.
We're all human.
Yeah, that's right. It's a human thing. I'm not going to be perfect, but I've at least I feel like now I've got a better idea of when to bounce those things past people, and maybe also how to articulate it in an appropriate way without losing the message.
Yeah. Because that's a big part of professionalism, isn't it? Understanding what is within your purview. So whether or not, especially, when you're in sort of a hierarchical structure and someone asks you to do a piece of work, but, you know, understanding the context, understanding the bigger picture, and thinking, well, what are my professional responsibilities here, and what do I need to consider, not just what have I been told to do.
Yes.
You know, that's an important transition as we go through our careers as actuaries and take on more responsibility and become qualified. But it sounds...
Yeah, so I was just going to say, backing yourself, having a bit of confidence in yourself to say, actually, I think I need to do this. Like
yeah, and not being pressured by time or you know what someone else is saying you should do, and just going, actually, this is my professional reputation, and I need to do what's right. But at the same time, you know, not sort of taking it too far that you just sort of looking at all the details and being perfectionist about absolutely everything, and still making that judgment. That's a hard thing, isn't it?
It is such a hard thing. Yeah, and I've done, you know, it was sort of, I've gone too far one way, gone a bit by the other, and I feel like I'm learning what, you know, how to find that middle ground.
Yeah, and it sounds like you've also built that professional sounding board, or you know those people that you can go to as well when those things happen, so you can sort of test what you're thinking and get some feedback on that as well. That can be really helpful, really invaluable.
It can, and I feel like you can create that anywhere, because I feel like, you know, like a lot of organizations have a peer review process or so on. It's like using that process, and maybe it's using it informally as well. So I think it is just being able to create that. And I guess if you don't have that in your organization, you know, finding someone who can do, you know, I'm sure the Institute actually has stuff as well. There are, if it's quite a serious thing, but it's even just having that network of people, whether it's your peers or whatever, to call on someone. You can do it without breaching confidentiality, you know, you can just talk through conceptually. Yeah, and I do think it's just so worth it. Yeah.
Definitely.
I imagine that's where, I was going to say, I imagine that's where the stuff that you're doing as well is helping people build those networks in a way. So
yeah, definitely. I think the networking is so important. It's interesting because a recent survey we did of the profession asked everybody what they needed more of to develop their career, and networking came out as number one. And it's interesting because you think, well, why do we need networking? But there's a whole lot of reasons why we need networking, and it's more than just going to a drink session and swapping business cards. It's about actually building working relationships with each other so that you can build that trust and be able to know who to go to for certain things, or you know how to sort of provide that professional support to each other.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that takes time. And the Institute does support some of that as well, which is, I know I've tapped into that in the past as well. So it's and I find I've got a role with the Life Insurance Practice Committee as the convener of the Life subcommittee, and part of my role in that is actually tapping subject matter experts to help us with things as the life, you know, like that's part of what we do, and it's great, and it does help develop that network. Yeah, right. Yeah, so important. Such an important part of being an actuary. It's not just about the technical. It's about building your networks and knowing how to navigate some of those trickier things that aren't as clear cut.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, Catherine, we talked a bit before about work-life balance. You said you went into consulting to improve your work-life balance. I get asked this all the time, but I'm interested to hear your thoughts on how you manage work-life balance, particularly as you become more senior.
Yeah, and that's a good question. It is, and you know, I say I've got some quite senior people working for me as well, and I do say to them all the time, they'll be sick of me saying it, I'm like, your most precious asset is your time. So it is, you know, and trying to help them, and I'm saying them because, you know, trying to walk the walk can be challenging, so I'm not saying I'm perfect at it, but, you know, really help them in terms of setting boundaries, and, you know, and what's their, you know, well, what's their aim as well, maybe in terms of their working time, and setting their priorities, like prioritize themselves. It's that sort of stuff. And in consulting, a lot of it is around planning, and also about being really proactive and communication. So it is about that in terms of, because you're right, you've got a lot of, at the end of the day, we will deliver for the client. So there is a need to be flexible as well. So I absolutely acknowledge that. And we do have busy and quiet time. So we do have both. And it is about, I think you've got to have those boundaries. Like there is a lot of personal accountability or ownership needed there to be able to actually do that. And then, because as soon as you start, you know, I've said to someone who works with me, I said, if I send you an email at 5 o'clock on a Friday, I don't expect you to look at it till you come back. You know, like, that is not my expectation. If something is really urgent, I'll give you a ring, you know, and so don't even look at it, and I don't expect you to look at that on the weekend. If you start replying to me in the weekend, you know, then that's setting a different expectation for me. So it's just being aware of what you're doing as well. And are you living up to you? Are you setting your boundaries? You know, put a delay a reply on it. You know, like even if you, don't tell me you want to be doing that. But I guess the other ones I've got to just, you know, delegate, you know, and also, you know, work with great people and empower them. So who feel safe to, you know, to have those, to make mistakes, and you've got safeguards around that so that you feel like you can, that you're comfortable, that you'll catch anything as well. So it's just, I don't know, that's part of it. So that, I mean,
so
sorry, you go.
I was just going to say, so setting your boundaries or being clear about your priorities, delegating, and surrounding yourself with good people, investing in those people as well, so that you can sort of share the load, and planning well as well.
Yeah, and trusting those people. Like at the end of the day, we are perfectionists, so it is trying to go, how do I trust and empower these people and let them do their job, you know, but there's a sufficient safeguard, I feel comfortable. Like you've just got to find that right balance, because that is for us, it can be really hard to let go. Really hard.
What do you find helpful when you're sort of needing to step back and trust in people, or delegate? You know, I mean, sometimes when you first start delegating or when you first start managing, it can be easier and quicker to do things yourself. So there's a temptation there to just work harder and do more yourself. But you know, how do you sort of get that balance?
Yeah, and that's really a false economy for me. That's, again, the conversations I've been having. So I'm obviously giving examples of other people here, not saying that I necessarily do it perfectly myself, but it is that, look, if it takes me half an hour to train someone to do something that's going to take an hour, I've just saved myself half an hour. And if it's a repeatable job, even more so. If it takes me an hour to train someone to do an hour-long job, but it's repeatable, you know, like, and even the other way around, you know, it's just, it is saving time. It is you're developing them, you know, there's a win for them in this too. Like just holding on to it is not helping the wider group either. So I guess I'd just say, but you do, in terms of safeguards, whether it's I guess it's different for everybody individually about where their comfort level is, but it probably is just setting clear, you know, doing the planning up front. The planning needs to be done, whether it's the person doing it for you plans it and tells you what they're going to deliver and you help them with that process, or whether it's that you've done the planning and then you're allocating. I think planning is key, and really understanding where your milestones are. I also think it's probably agreeing what the output is up front. You know, it's that whole, because if that's the safeguard ultimately is, we need to produce something. What's it going to look like? If you both agreed that, then at least you're working towards the same goal. And I think working towards. So, and it's probably having regular check-ins, because and particularly if you haven't done the output bit up front, you need to know if we're going off on a completely different tangent. So it's like really having those conversations about what's the cadence of that. And it really is going to depend on how senior someone is. You know, they might want daily stand-ups. It might be someone senior running a project for you, so they might, and for a long-term project, they might want to just catch up once a week. I'm okay with that. It's more about, how do I know it's going to be on track and that we're going to get to the output that we were originally envisaging. And we all often say, you know, start filling in the report at the start. You know, if everyone's on the same page in terms of where you're headed, that can really help you stay on track. And I think, like you said, that the planning is so important, but the monitoring is important too, isn't it? Because invariably something happens that, you know, sends you off course, or something changes, or someone gets sick, or a client changes their mind, or something happens. And being able to kind of go, hang on, this is what we sort of agreed to. Okay, I see that this has happened, but what does that mean? Let's actually rethink. Do we need to push out our timelines? Do we need to review the scope? What needs to adjust that as things go on? That's exactly right. So again, so much experience that plays into knowing how to, you know, delegate to different people, and how to keep different projects on track, and understanding your people, and realizing that it's a false economy to just do everything yourself, but to invest in others, because it's win-win. If you're saving some time, even if it's still taking you some time to train them, but they're learning as well, and that means they can take on more too. Exactly. And I just need to be careful sometimes, because it can be a little bit easy to dump it rather than delegate it and just go, you just run with this. But then that's not fair on the person if they're coming back and you're going, well, that's not what I was asking for. You know, it's like, okay, well, that wasn't helpful of me, because I haven't given you the guidance. You know, if it was a true you're taking it and owning it, then there needs to be something I was letting go of and that was completely theirs. I do need to find that balance, and it's very easy if you're time poor to not strike it right. And I guess it's also agreeing with them up front. What do they want? When do they want to, how, and that they feel comfortable coming to you as well.
Like those regular checkpoints.
Yeah.
Opening up the communication so that they can check in if they get stuck or they're not sure what to do. Yeah. So much to think about. So so I'm going to ask you then, what's your best tip for actuaries stepping into management roles? We've talked about delegating and work-life balance and handling mistakes, but what's your top tip for actuaries stepping into management roles?
I can only do one. If I was gonna do,
how many have you got?
I had about 5 or 6.
That's okay.
Okay, so
tell me your top tips then.
So I'll start with my top one, which is probably the last one I wrote down. But when I was thinking to myself about what would my top tip be, was actually to take on more than you think you can, which sounds the opposite of the managing work-life balance, but it doesn't have to be, because it's all about, and I did a course, it might have only been 5 years ago, so this is late in my, I wish I'd heard it even earlier, but it was that whole, as actuaries, we can be, and please, I'm apologies to anyone who's listening to this who goes, this isn't me, but we can be a perfectionist. We've always done very well at what we do. We love getting it right to the nth degree, the 10th decimal point, whatever, and we put in 120% often. But would anyone notice if we did 80% and we actually spent the other time doing more? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's actually, am I spending, there's more saying take on other stuff by maybe not being the perfectionist in the stuff that you are doing. Where can you stop? And it helps with the work-life balance too. Like, it is that, would actually anyone notice? You might notice, but actually 80% is probably amazing anyway.
Probably enough.
It really is. And enough to do a good job. Yeah, it's still a good job. Yeah, that's right. It's not a worse job. It's just, you might not have done that extra 40 that was going to get you this teeniest bit that only you're actually going to notice. So it was a great challenge to me. And it's a challenge, for the people I'm managing, again, just where I'm trying to say to them, I want to help you manage your time, because as you step up into your next role, you'll actually be more time poor. So the delegation is important. It comes back, it's that circular discussion, but I want you to take on more. It does sound like a contradiction, but that's my top one. And I guess that's why I'm doing ESG and why I'm challenging myself, to go and present at the summit, and why I'm doing this is I'm trying to challenge myself that way and go, same number of hours, like I'm trying to do it within all of that. So
so the benefit then of not sort of being perfectionist about things is you're spending less time on things because you're getting it to be good enough. You're not sort of tinkering and not really adding any value. That's giving you some extra time so that you can better manage your work-life balance. And it's also giving you some more time to do extra things that are going to help you grow as a professional and as an actuary.
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. So take on that extra role within your organisation that, someone needs to step up and do, say yes, or that exciting project that you want to get involved in. It's those sort of things. Say yes to those things. Those are the things that when you talk about mistakes, the things you regret are the things you didn't do.
True.
If that opportunity is coming up, put your hand up, be proactive. Also don't wait for them to come to you. Sorry, I added another one.
That's okay. So be proactive, say yes to things. Don't just keep layering the things on though. Be mindful about how much time you're investing in everything and get it to be, to an appropriate level, but without sort of continuing to perfect it beyond where it needs to be.
Yeah, and I think the other ones, like if I was going to do more than one, like my other one would be just around how important the soft skills are. As actuaries, we're so trained and technical, and I know the Institute and what you're doing is fantastic around helping develop those soft skills. We do need to do that. Like that is so critical, particularly we're dealing with other professionals, all the time that don't speak actuary speak. And it's interesting when I do engagements where I deal with actuaries, we speak the same language. It's like there's just already an understanding, and when you're dealing with other professionals, and there's nothing against the other professionals, I think it's fantastic, but it's a learning. Like I'm learning new language at the moment in terms of just agile working and what, those projects and stuff, and talking about epics and features and, like it's just a different, so that it's understanding soft skills, and then I think also just understanding your own strengths and weaknesses. Like, it sounds, I did a course recently, and over your career you do lots of them, but I did one that really resonated with me, which was a Gallup's strength profile, and I loved it because it actually talks about, it's one of those ones that actually looks at your strengths rather than your weaknesses, and it's sort of saying, and then you build a team around you. The idea is your team have all the different skills, and I loved it because it actually celebrates what it is about you. But I think it is also being cognizant of, well, here it might be my weakness, so in this project or in this job or in this whatever, either surround myself with people who have those strengths, or just be really conscious of that and make sure that I don't have a blind spot in what I'm doing. So I think that's just something. And then lastly, curiosity. Just for us, it's just that, and challenging stuff, getting outside your comfort zone. It's that sort of keeping that well-rounded, broad thinking, which is a bit, it all aligns to that, taking on other things. It's just keeping yourself relevant and vibrant that way. I think it's great. And you can do that within a field. Like, I'm not saying don't, if you really love the field you're in, you can do that within that field, but think about depth maybe rather than breadth. So I'm someone who loves going across lots of things. You can have it within yours. So I don't know, feeling like, but that's for me. Like, so I'm saying all of this it's very personal to the person, and that's my, I guess, personality is I want to keep learning and growing. But I don't think that's a bad thing. It keeps us relevant.
It's a great thing, Catherine. And I think it's, it's wonderful to hear your journey through your actuarial career to date. And you've still got so much more ahead of you, but, seeing the different, the solid grounding that you had in your corporate roles, the transition to consulting, enjoying the variety and the problem solving, and some of those interesting problems that you've worked on as a consultant as well, where it is more than just being able to do some actuarial modelling, but you need to be able to talk to people and problem solve and work with non-actuaries. That makes for some really interesting projects, and
it does.
Which, line up to make a really interesting actuarial career as well. So I think that's great. And you've shared some really valuable tips with us as well around being able to delegate and the benefits of that, how to do that, and some tips for new actuaries stepping into management roles around how to balance their work and life, and how to set some boundaries, and how to try and keep all those plates spinning as they navigate their busy days. So Catherine, thank you so much for sharing your time and wisdom and stories with us today. It's been really, really lovely chatting with you.
Thanks for having me. That was fantastic. Thanks.
Thanks, Catherine.